and slowly Baumgarten to the hub. Baumgarten to the hub, those types of projects, not just gas, because when we look at energy security, we look at not just sources and routes, and I know that this grouping and other groupings, we've had a lot of talk about gas and routes and sources, but we also look at type. And so we're looking at projects in the areas of renewable energy, energy efficiency, cleaner fossil energy, where U.S. provider of goods, services, and technology can really make an impact in integrating not just the subregions inside Europe with themselves, but integrating Europe more broadly and integrating across the Atlantic. So building those commercial partnerships that help embed the relationship.
Okay. So, Rekha, a difficult question for you. So this is the 3 Seas initiative, and it seems like for one of those seas things are moving pretty well, the Baltic, but with the Adriatic and the Black Sea, maybe not so well. The 3 Seas initiative was launched by the presidents of Poland and Croatia, yet we're Kirk Island LNG still seen. Bulgaria, there have been some noises recently about related to Russia that we think how committed the entire region is to this initiative, at least on the side.
Well, thanks for as well as for inviting me. I'm very honored to discuss this issue in summer bringing to Washington with GMF. So thank you to the organizers. I think it is the most historic possibilities that the region has now that we're discussing, because it seems like the 3 Seas initiative offers a response to one of the real Achilles wheel of the region, which is its fragmentation, and the fact that it is composed of many small units, small countries, which have a lot of challenges ahead of them. So I think the possibility of seeing the challenges of the countries in particular, broader regional framework, is a great one. And of course, we have a good experience in this, the Visegrad cooperation. And although there's a lot of concern now within the Visegrad countries regarding the 3 Seas initiative, whether that would shadow over the Visegrad cooperation, that would weaken the successfully functioning framework, I have a strong trust that this can add to the functioning, and also that Visegrad cooperation success can give us a good way to how handle the tensions inside the members of the 3 Seas. Because one that we learned is from the Visegrad and goals that were making possible the cooperation of these countries. We can see with the 3 Seas initiative is exactly what you have. It's composed of 3 seas, 3 very distinct regions, which have very distinct priorities and very distinct current defining situations to which they have to develop answers. One of the most unspoken of probably, or most undiscussed, is definitely the Black Sea region, although we have now, since the Ukrainian crisis, of course, more of a focus on this area. What we have to see is that this area has been suffering a constant and chronic lack of any security infrastructure over the decades or even longer. So that is a problem in itself. Another big question mark is, how the Nord Stream interconnectivity have been talking about the region, and I'm very honored to speak with Piotr here on panel, because we talked about it, 15 people? Yeah, at least. Yeah, I remember, as part of the government at that time, part of the MOL delegations, we talked about regional cooperation. This is an issue that we really found very important. And there were many efforts, and part of this was, how to link to the Adriatic Sea, and how to make sure that we do have this north-south interconnectivity. And unfortunately, what we can see after whatever 10, 15 years almost of talking about this continuously is one good news. The implementation of the Kirk LNG project the same 2 years as it was 15 years ago. That's the good news. So it will happen. It will happen. But we don't know when, how, and if, really. And I think this is why this new, broader framework is really of a great potential for us. Because what we have seen before is that a lot of the internal dynamics of the region made it impossible. And I would, be happy to discuss, the list of failures, why it did not happen, because I was very much supporting and trying to work on having the Kirk LNG project and the access to the world markets from the southern part of the Central East European region happen. We have to learn the lessons, and we have to focus on how to go forward with this. I think all of this discussion that we're having now with the Three Seas Initiative is really timely, because what we can see is that this offers a very bold, very strategic, very inspiring vision for the region, something that can really move things forward out of the previously experienced conflicts. And the benefits are definitely far more than economic, although the importance of the Three Seas Initiative is that it does focus on infrastructure development. But when we go from this infrastructure development that is important for the Baltic countries, cybersecurity, which should be important for the rest of the countries as well, or we go to the energy infrastructure, all of these have strategic consequences that will strategically strengthen the region and the region's cooperation. So yes, we have a lot of competing interests among the countries of the Three Seas Initiative. But the difference now, and I think that's what is a possibility or a potential to explore, is that there is a broader framework in which we can try to see and discuss the challenges or discuss these conflicting interests. And I believe that one of the big questions is how we can turn and use these infrastructure development projects. First, of course, identify the projects and then implement the projects. And there we have a problem of funding, but also a problem of interest coordination mechanisms within the Three Seas Initiative, which will have to be built up. But as part of this broader regional framework and the discussion of this, what we can have, I think, is a very good chance of finally the region taking its fate in its own hands and moving forward from a previously blocking set of conflicting challenges into maybe a different status of cooperation. So although I do not feel like I feel like I have a birthright of being pessimistic as a Hungarian. So definitely, I could tell you what the challenges are, and I have a list of what has to be done for this to work. But I would like to emphasize the potential and the strategic attraction of the Three Seas Initiative.
Okay. Oh, thank you. That's very upbeat. That's good to hear. Piotr, I'd like to come back to you. And recently, there seems to be a settlement of the Gazprom anti-competition case. And I guess we don't know all the details yet, but there was a press release and all.
From the Commission by press release that the case has been settled in a way that there is a commitment from Gazprom. From our intelligence, we know our information that the Gazprom wrote this commitment themselves, but that's a detail, and they will stick to it for the time being. And in case they will violate their own commitments, then and that's important detail, then the Commission may impose fines. This is the state of play which we were not expecting, and we are deeply disappointed with this decision. We can sue, of course, this decision once we have written papers, something in writing on this, and we will be very careful when analyzing this case, of course, as we usually are. and then we will follow. Now, what will be the consequence? That was a question. The consequences will be, to our understanding, of course, the same as they were for the last 7 years, because it was, 6 years. 6 years, the case was in the picture for 6 years, until it reached the final decision, not yet public, but decision, openly, and I repeat, openly stated by the Commission on the press conference, that it exists, although it's not known. So for the last 6 years, the Commission did a lot of work, including writing companies which cooperate with Gazprom, voluntarily or not, but they do, and collecting all possible documents which were available. In our case, it was extremely deep from the Commission side, so they scrutinized every single piece of paper and message on electronic messages we had, and for this reason they know everything about it, at least from our company, and did nothing for this last 6 years. And during this 6 years of the case, when the case was deliberated by the Commission, a lot of things happened, including ignoring the arbitration court decision by in Stockholm against Gazprom against Naftogaz. As you may remember, there was an arbitration resolution which has been completely ignored by Gazprom. They didn't even not even pay a fine, which they have been charged with, but they even didn't even they even stopped delivering gas, which has been ordered by the arbitration court. So these cases will follow, because nothing really changed in reality, in real life. Last 6 years will be next 6 years in terms of relations between Gazprom and their customers, including ourselves. To explain even more in one sentence, we also have our own case in the arbitration court in Stockholm. It's the third year now, and it's on the agenda, and we expect by the end of this, I think even this month, we expect the first reaction by the arbitration court, and we'll follow it, of course, strictly. We have very strong arguments, and this is very different arbitration from the Commission. So what the Commission did, they didn't even pretend that they follow the procedure or the way of thinking of the arbitration court. No, that is a completely different panel, and I have to say from the point of the company, from the point of view of the company, that we've lost our grounds. We don't understand what's going on. Really, for this reason, we are disappointed. We can remember cases of, I don't remember, huge American companies fined over 3 months, and paid, of course, everything to the very last cent. And the 6 years of proceedings over evident violating and abusing monopoly rules, and not only monopoly rules, by Gazprom, ending with practically nothing, because this commitment will bring really nothing to the picture. To give one and last example, one of the commitments is to stop preventing from reselling gas from one company or one country to another, or one customer to another customer. It never functioned, first. Second, in our case, it was removed from the contract 10 years ago or more, and it's like strict prohibition from riding a horse in the middle of Washington. We can do it, of course, but nobody really ride a horse in Washington. We use taxis rather than walking than anything else. So these kind of things have been strictly prohibited, and they will be followed certainly, but it will nothing change in real life. So no changes.
So you don't think it has any impact on
only negative
spur to additional activity under the 3 Cs, or a negative? Rekha, do you have any thoughts on that?
Nothing will change for better.
Okay.
Everything can change for worse, but for better, certainly nothing.
Let's hear the optimistic side.
Indeed, I think this is really the situation. We have, and we're about to come out with our report on Nord Stream 2. It's just coming out this Thursday or Friday from SIPA, and I would, this is the place of advertisement, I would highly recommend, because this is going to be a great study. We looked at all the statements that we have been hearing over the past few years on why Nord Stream 2 is a must, why it has to be built. And of course, we heard all of these arguments. We enlisted and tried to look at a very pragmatic way of what the figures, what the facts show on the ground. One of these arguments is, of course, that Nord Stream 2 is a purely business venture. It's just an economic decision that will serve the consumers. It is needed because the European consumption trends indicate that has to be built. It is needed because the European upstream projections make it necessary to have Nord Stream 2 bring extra gas into the continent. It is needed because the Ukrainian political situation is so unstable, and so unstable it's not going to be reliable for the long term for the poor European consumers. It is needed because the European pipeline system is in such a bad condition that it has to be repaired, and the investment that is needed into the Ukrainian pipeline system is worth rather building a new pipeline system. What we can see, and of course the last one, is that the Nord Stream 2 construction of Nord Stream 2 can go forward by ensuring a certain capacity for the Ukrainian pipeline system as well. So we went through with the data, and what we have seen is that point by point, all of these arguments do not stand the test of reality. And what our paper shows is that the facts and the figures on the ground contradict these arguments, and it's very clearly proving that this is really a political venture in which there is a political decision-making with inevitable political consequences, irrespective, what the motivations are. Okay, let's leave that on the side. But the consequences are inevitably strategic and political for the entire continent. And I believe that this is one of the discussions that we need to focus on very much, because what is happening on the ground is much faster than what is perceivable. So the preparations, the negotiations, the sort of the elements of this project are almost prepared to a much closer readiness to launch the whole project than it is perceived in general in the European discourse. And there is a big lack of understanding, I think, really, of the various arguments in the European public and among the European decision makers. So it's a very important moment, I believe, for the Central European energy security and supply stability, to make sure that the arguments are out on the open, and that the negative consequences are clearly understood by the European audiences and decision makers as well. And I think in this regard, definitely the Polish figures and understanding and statements on this project are hugely important. But there is a whole range of regional issues that have to be added to this to make clear that there is a regional problem related to Nord Stream 2 that will inevitably hit the Central European region. It will hit the European Union as well. And I think that's what really has to be underlined, because the whole concept and the whole project is going to be completely undermining the European Union's energy union project, which is a big dream, it's a big vision, it's a big statement that has really been very strategic, almost unusual from our experience, but it is a very important decision that is supported by all the EU member states. And if we let the Nord Stream 2 project to happen, that will completely undermine the European Union's energy vision and energy strategy for the long term. It will completely redraft the whole energy map of the continent.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to ask you, then you can elaborate. So, transatlantic energy cooperation, this is something we've been doing for a long time. Some of the talking points are the same as they were when I was doing this years ago. But there is a new element, which is we now have LNG that can come to Europe. It's come to Poland, it's come to Lithuania. So could you talk a little bit about how that changes things, the role of U.S. LNG, and then you can comment on anything else you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at U.S. LNG, and actually I think what we should do is we should really broaden and look at global gas markets. Gas is not traded in markets the way oil is, largely because of the difficulty in transportation. So we have these bifurcated, smaller regional markets based on the existence of transportation infrastructure pipelines and gasification, liquefaction and regasification infrastructure at LNG import and export terminals, some of which are connected to pipelines. And so I think, over the course of the last couple of years, the United States has really changed our relationship with both global oil and gas markets. We have gone from being what we had been for decades, the world's largest consumer of hydrocarbons, to being now not just the world's largest consumer, but also one of the world's and now we're also the second largest consumer, because I believe China has outstripped us both in oil and gas. It's certainly in oil, maybe not in gas. But we are also now the first or second largest producer of both oil and gas. And that has changed our interaction with global markets. It has changed our ability to provide, to be a source of imports for Europe. We don't have misconceptions about how gas markets work. We understand that Russia is going to be a key, if not primary, supplier of gas for Europe for the foreseeable future. As Mr. Wozniak said, gas reserves in Russia are immense. It's a fact. There's no arguing it. There's also geographic proximity. Moving gas via pipelines is the most efficient and inexpensive way to move gas. Our concern when we look at Nord Stream 2, the second line of Turkish Stream, when we look at the 3Cs initiative, is right now Europe finds itself with many European countries, and probably a dozen European countries, heavily, if not solely reliant upon Russian gas as a sole source of supply. And this is because of the historical legacy of old Soviet hub and spoke infrastructure that was built 30, 40 years ago. And a lot of that infrastructure is reaching the end of its natural life. This is an opportunity for Europe to invest in energy security, diversify sources and routes away from this Russian chokehold. And the 3Cs initiative is an opportunity to do that, to achieve that level of diversification of route and source, whether it's bringing in gas from Azerbaijan, bringing in gas from Iraq, bringing in gas from the Eastern Mediterranean, from the Black Sea, more gas from North Africa. I mean, I know that this is a Central European focused discussion, but Iberia is an energy island too. There's an enormous amount of LNG import capacity in Spain and Portugal that's locked in Iberia because there's no way to get that gas across the Pyrenees. And I think what has happened over the course of the last 10 years with regard to growing interconnections and the maturity of the gas and electricity market in Southern and Central Europe, these have been huge steps forward, but it's not done yet. And 3Cs is the opportunity to fully interconnect these markets, to break chokeholds, to break bottlenecks. And I would argue that when you look at these massive infrastructure investments in the form of Nord Stream 2, the second line of Turkish Stream, what those serve to do, in addition to completely bypassing Ukraine and creating a whole host of geostrategic problems in that, with regard to that country, with regard to Europe and European unity and sort of the European energy future, it takes current infrastructure vulnerabilities and builds them in cement for another 30 to 40 years. And so the U.S. argument there is, let markets work, let markets compete, whether gas comes from Qatar or Australia or the United States, LNG, it really doesn't matter. Let it go to let the purchasers purchase the gas that makes the most commercial sense for them. But don't lock yourself into an infrastructure relationship that your children and grandchildren will be paying off 40 years from now.
Good point. Okay, we have about 10 minutes or so left, so let's open up the floor for questions. We'll start right over here.
Don't think so.
It's Bartosz Wisiecki with PISM. I'm I'm afraid I don't have a simple question to Madam Oudkirk, and it's about sanctions against Nord Stream 2. I know it's not up to your department to introduce them, but the question remains. And here's the thesis. You may disagree or agree or disagree with it. If the United States is serious about stopping Nord Stream 2, it has some tools on the table, but it's going to mean picking up a huge fight with a very influential European country, and that's Germany. However, the United States is already picking up unimportant fights in a whole host of issues. Yeah. When there is a very important, tangible project out there lingering, threatening the unity of the European Union, the strength and the freedom of Central Europe, the gas markets, and so on and so forth. So my question is, if you were to advise the new Secretary of State, sir, could we possibly do away with the whole talk about the trade wars and get serious about Nord Stream 2? And again, beyond rhetorics, there are some tools on the table. Thank you.
Easy question.
Yeah, the very easy question. So I'm going to focus on the energy part of that question because I'm from the Energy Bureau. I mean, I think it's very clear to everyone who's been watching the debate in Washington for the last year and a half, that there is an intense focus here that has been growing in recent weeks and months on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and the dangers it poses to European energy security. On August 2nd of last year, President Trump signed into law the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act that provided the administration with the ability, it's a permissive authority, to sanction transactions related to Russian energy export pipelines. So every company of whatever nationality working in that sector, the Russian energy export pipeline sector, now faces an elevated level of sanctions risk that was not there on August 1st of 2017. I mean, this is known. I think companies have factored this into their risk calculation. So the United States has a tool, but just because we have a tool doesn't mean that we have to use it. Europe also has a plethora of tools. And I am not a Europe specialist, and sitting here next to a company representative and a think tank and former government representative, Europe has a massive number of tools. Legal tools, regulatory tools, full European tools, member state tools. I think the United States views ourselves, our role in this, as sort of clearly enunciating as an outside observer who is very focused on resilience in European energy systems, on a Europe that is capable, willing, able, free, prosperous, not subject to coercion by outside economic forces, to be the partner that Europe has always been for us, to identify this danger, and then really to look to Europe, to use European tools to change, modify, delay, stop these projects. And I would say Nord Stream 2 and the second line of Turkish Stream would both fall firmly in that category, that do nothing but build in vulnerability for the future. I think there are a variety of European solutions, and just because the United States has a possible tool does not mean that Europe should stop focusing on the many tools that Europe has.
So in a nutshell, it's Europe first.
It is Europe first.
Okay. Over here. And let's do two. Over here and then back in the corner there.
Hi, Gugaratz with Argus Media. I have a question for Mr. Wozniak. You talked about the Baltic pipe, and in the past, Norway was not really interested in that project. Are they more interested now?
Okay, we'll come to that in a second. In the back, please.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Sam Hancock, Thermal Planet, Thermal Planet TV. Looking at the Norwegian connection that you're doing, Mr. Wozniak, is there, with their sovereign wealth funds, one of the largest in the world, what are they doing in collaboration with you as far as providing this alternative? And then secondly, looking at, tools or no tools, the United States being very passive as far as these markets, I think really goes beyond the pale. In fact, there's huge political pressure on the European states, you know, in order to allow these other pipelines to go through. So why isn't the United States willing to leverage, you know, what it can to assist the Europeans to move forward with alternatives instead of just saying, well, it's all up to Europe, you know, do what you want to do, let the free markets work. Free markets don't work, and they haven't worked. And you know, people are getting locked into things that's going to be 30 to 40 years from now.
Okay.
And thank you for being here.
Why don't you start? Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the questions. Yes, over the course of 10 years now, that was a long-term project to connect us to the Norwegian gas fields, not to the Norwegian market, which does not exist, in fact, because they don't use gas, but to the Norwegian gas fields. As I said, God blessed us, and we are fulfilling after 10 years of planning. We fulfilled it. It's the third attempt. We will have it. To assure you that both of you, because the question is more or less the same, the companies are eager to cooperate with us. They do not. They have not a cent of burden for financing it. Not at all. Not at all. So the Norwegian companies, Gassco especially, which is an operator in the North Sea, doesn't pay a cent. So they are, of course, they are satisfied to have another outlet for their gas, because they can play and they can multiply their arbitrage capabilities. So certainly, I was confirming it directly, talking several times to Gassco, the operator. So they do not pay for, to make it simple. So there is no reason to oppose. If you have another outlet for your gas, it's only forbidden to you, and it is granted. Maybe even we will be involved in the financing of the last single investment. It's a minor thing, because we would like to have a slightly different connection between the gas platforms, exploration platforms on the North Sea, but this is the investment of the company. Now the all financing comes from Gas System, the Polish operator, and Energinet, which is a Danish operator. And that's a very remarkable thing. Energinet, there's probably nobody from Denmark here, but anyway, I can openly say it. They, in their status as a company, the first sentence is, we are non-for-profit company. And this is the gas operator for Denmark. We are not for-profit company. So they provide better solutions for all the market, and they benefit from other sources than just the market. Our company, Gas System, which is in cooperation with Energinet to build the pipe, doesn't have the sentence in the status, but never mind, they have no exposure to the market whatsoever. So they just build the road for interested parties. As I was trying to show on the slide, the open season lasted, I think, altogether 6 months or more. 9 months together. Thank you. 9 months altogether. Everybody was willing to join the initiative for shipping, not for investment. For investment, we are cut off from any investment in transmission. We are not allowed to, according to the third package, we are not allowed to invest in transmission system. So, and we are, by the way, we would be ready to do it and very happy to do it, but we are not allowed. So that's the simplification of the. There is no problem with them. Direct, and the last confirmation of the interest of Norwegian state, not company only, was, I think, two weeks ago. There was a seminar in Denmark, Oslo, sorry. Anyway, in Oslo, and the Minister of Energy of Norway, he has been quoted in the press, said we are very happy to have Poland as a partner. He meant ourselves, our company, rather than a country, because we invested in the north, in the gas fields, not the state. But we are a serious player now. I can say this. In the North Sea, we produce and we explore a lot, and we will be buying, and our acquisition targets in the North Sea are numerous. We are very conservative in what we are doing, but anyway, we came there to stay rather than just to make money and go away. So favorable climate from the government. You can reach the quotation from the Minister of Energy of Norway from 2 weeks ago. Company level, well, we cooperate in the North Sea with everybody, with Aker, with BP, with Shell, with Exxon retreated from North Sea, but that's not so bad. We bought from them, so we are as a provider of gas, we are fully dependent only on the pipeline, which is about to be built in 2022. And then, again, and once more, and last time, we will replace our eastern contract with Russians, which is a take-or-pay contract, very hard to stand. That's the reason the gas prices in Poland are so high, because we have to pay the fixed price, which has been dictated years ago by Gazprom, and there is no choice because that's the commitment. But it will expire in 2022, and then we will start buying on the regular basis via hubs or directly for sending gas from our own gas fields in Norway to our customers. And of course, it will be to the benefit of not only the market but our own customers, which we take care very much of.
Okay. And your second question related to
The U.S.
U.S. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the issue of U.S. support for European energy security, I mean, it comes in a variety of different ways. So first off, the United States has long supported, so for 10, 12, 20 years, supported projects that provide alternate supply into the European market. And I would say the Southern Gas Corridor, which saw first gas last week in Azerbaijan, is an excellent example of this. This is a project that has no U.S. investment content, but that the U.S. has been steadfastly supporting over a variety of different administrations over the course of more than a decade. Because it provides a brand new source of gas into Europe, in particular into Southern Europe, which is one of the least diversified subregions in Europe. Additionally, the United States has spent a lot of money, taxpayer money, on assistance to Ukraine so that Ukraine can reform and adapt and modernize Naftogaz, its upstream subsidiary, its transmission system, so that it can be a more reliable and better transit source for Russian gas into Europe, answering some of the questions that have been raised by sort of opponents of Ukrainian transit with regard to reliability of the TSO. So we have seen Naftogaz over the course of the last several years, with assistance from, among others, the United States, the European Union, the EBRD, and I believe the IMF. There's definitely an IMF program there. Go from being a net loss to the government to one of the largest, if not the largest, taxpayers in Ukraine. I think that's a great success story, and it's something that the United States has put money behind. Now, for a variety of reasons, most primarily because Europe is the developed world, and we don't offer, like aid money to the developed world. We don't pay for projects in Europe. We have provided limited technical assistance to some really strategic projects. For instance, the Kirk LNG terminal helped to sort of provide specifications and really look at sort of how that fits in and how LNG would work, because we are a large exporter of LNG. I think saying that the United States has been completely hands-off on European energy security is not accurate. We have been very hands-on, and in fact, I've had some people tell me we've been way too hands-on. I think, but the relationship between the United States and the European Union and the European member states is a relationship between equals. It's one where we have a lot of give and take, a lot of debate. We feel that we come to the table with sort of a unique point of view. It's a geostrategic point of view. And we hope that it is a welcome addition to the debate.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're out of time. Or okay, did you want to add anything, Reika? You seemed to.
If I can just, I didn't want to take more time, but if we have this 1 minute, I very much appreciate what has been said, and I think this is really an amazing development that we have seen in Central Europe. We have now companies that are able to invest in achieving strategic goals, and the countries that have access to sea could profit from their access to sea, to developing it to access to the world gas markets, which is what has happened in the case of Poland, in the case of Lithuania, with the LNG terminals that are being built. And I think this is really historic. What is very interesting is that, of course, landlocked countries have a different set of problems, and there, the success record is also not too bad, because at least some of the most important infrastructure interconnecting the pipeline systems of the region have been completed, and there's only smaller parts that are still missing from the big picture, and it will be a big framework for or platform for trading gas from the world gas markets. What is very sad and very telling is the southern part, the Adriatic Sea, which is still missing. And it's, I think that's why what we can see is that although it's very true that it is there's a very important presence of the United States that can be felt in these discussions, and we very much support it. It is very much needed as well. So I would very much encourage and very much appreciate, from our own point of view, what we have seen is that the southern LNG terminal, which we have been discussing in Kirk Island for quite some time, did miss this sort of having an honest broker to promote the cooperation and to bring forward the cooperation. What has been happening is that there was a very interesting, and I'm quoting public sources, so it's not anything else, that when the idea of the Hungarian-Croatian interconnector and the Croatian LNG terminal was first raised, within half a year, the most important comments on this within the Croatian media started to be that instead of a Croatian-Hungarian partnership, which is not in the Croatian national interest, what would be in the national interest of Croatia is to have a Croatian-Russian cooperation. And it went on for years, undermining trust and cooperation and fundamentally leading the whole LNG terminal not to be implemented. It's a story that goes back to 10 years ago, but the lessons, I think, are very important. Yeah. And the lessons just show that cooperation in the region and the strategic identification of strategic projects is one very important thing. Having a framework for cooperation, having a benign pressure, having a benign underlining of the strategic consequences of building or not building, cooperating or not cooperating, is another very important element of this.
So more trips to the Adriatic for you, Sandra. I mean, that would be up. Okay. Thank you very much for this excellent discussion. So please join me in thanking you. Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be moving straight to the lunch remarks, so if I could ask you to stay seated, that would be very helpful. There will be lunch served after the lunch remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Before we go for lunch, we have yet additional 2 interventions which would help us to focus on further discussions over the lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, I have enormous pleasure to welcome to our conference and introduce to you Dale Tasharski, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Europe, U.S. Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration. Dale has a vast experience in promoting trade around the world. He is a career diplomat, who served around the world with experience in New Delhi, Japan, Germany, and Poland. He served to Poland in 1991, 1994, and that was very important and challenging time for Poland. It was a time of transformation, both systemic and economic. And that was a kind of the beginning of the Polish boom. Now we have experiencing the consequences of this boom as members of NATO and members of the European Union. And partially, I would say that that was a Dan's contribution to this movement from state-governed economy to the free market economy, promotion of Europe one, whole, and the peace and self-confident. Now we are much more self-confident than we used to be 25 years ago, and that's the reason why we decided to cooperate even closer in the region to make to bridge the gap, development gap between east part of European Union and the west part of European Union, to deliver to our societies goods which are indispensable also for business. I mean, better connections, better roads, better railways, faster. That's also very important. I mentioned to Dan before we came here my experience from I think beginning of May. I traveled from Katowice to Bucharest, and I spent 12 hours in my way, because I traveled through Frankfurt, of course, because there was no convenient connection otherwise. The reason of why I spent so many hours in waiting rather than flying is that there are no good roads between Katowice and Bucharest. There are no railway connections, and the only flight connections you can have is through Frankfurt. So it means that there are a lot of business opportunities in the region, and how these opportunities may be used by U.S. business, and how these opportunities would be promoted by the U.S. administration. Now we are going to hear from Dan. Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sławomir, for the kind introduction. I'm glad to be speaking to you today, and I realize I'm standing between you and what's going to be a very delightful lunch, so I'll try and keep my remarks short and to the point. It's a pleasure to join this terrific event. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and particularly on such a beautiful day in our nation's capital. To our event organizers, the German Marshall Fund and the Polish Institute of International Affairs, and to distinguished representatives from Central and Southeast Europe, including Undersecretaries Haranji and Cichowski, Ambassador Tinka, thank you all for this kind invitation to be with you. So in the spirit of today's lunch, I'm pleased to add some business flavor, if you will, to your menu. Because the 12 countries that comprise the 3 Cs initiative are not only strategically important to the United States, but they also combine to offer a commercially attractive region to U.S. business. And as you know, Central and Southeast Europe is home to key NATO members, which serve as a bulwark to security threats to the east. But the region also boasts over 100 million consumers, a combined GDP of over $2 trillion, and an impressive set of growing economies. Its favorable geographic position and demography, its emerging middle class, and strong entrepreneurial spirit make Central and Southeast Europe stand out as growth markets for new opportunities for U.S. trade and investment interests. Last October, the Commerce Department led a successful trade mission to Bulgaria, Greece, Serbia, Croatia, and Romania. It was called Trade Winds. Think of winds of trade in your sails. I was privileged to be able to lead our business delegation to its anchor event, the TradeWinds Business Forum in Bucharest, where there were 100 U.S. companies in attendance, including many small to medium-sized enterprises. In total, across the 5 country stops on this trade mission, we conducted more than 800 government-to-business meetings and more than 500 business-to-business meetings, many of which led to positive results, particularly for SMEs. For example, one rural U.S. manufacturing company found a distributor for its automated loading systems. An innovative U.S. waste recycling firm agreed to a strategic partnership to create new smart technologies and innovations for waste management in Romania. And a leading U.S. manufacturer of industrial contamination control products made its first sale in Bulgaria. And while business interest in Central and Southeast Europe runs the spectrum of industries, we see particular opportunities in aerospace and defense, energy, and ICT. We at the Department of Commerce are laser focused on promoting free, fair, and reciprocal trade between the U.S. and the region, and on getting deals for U.S. firms in these and other sectors. So the title of today's event is From Warsaw to Bucharest. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention a few things we are doing in Poland and Romania. In Warsaw, we recently concluded a successful 3rd edition of the U.S.-Poland Business Summit in April, convening a wide range of U.S. companies to meet with Polish business counterparts and key Polish government decision makers. As I mentioned earlier, the NATO defense spending pledge is essential to our security, and we are grateful to the Polish government for attaining it. U.S. defense firms are helping Poland's military by providing cutting-edge products and services, allowing us to achieve our mutual security goals. Poland's recent commitment to purchase the battle-tested Patriot-era missile defense system is a prime example. In the same vein, we are cooperating on cybersecurity solutions. Major, recognizable U.S. corporations now operate major cybersecurity facilities in Poland. We're also seeing positive developments in the energy sector, where U.S. exporters are primed to ship LNG to Poland. The first U.S. LNG export shipment arrived in Poland in June of last year, and we anticipate that a multi-year deal may soon follow. We stand ready to assist Poland in enhancing its energy infrastructure as it continues to quickly develop projects to increase gas delivery throughout the country and become a hub for the entire region. We're engaged in similar types of mutually beneficial collaboration with our friend and partner, Romania. Romania is an attractive market. In 2017 alone, Romania grew by over 7%, making it the fastest growing economy in the EU. In addition to hosting TradeWinds last October, we're boosting bilateral collaboration, particularly in the area of defense. Bucharest has taken strides to achieve the NATO 2% objective. Just this last December, the Romanian government agreed to purchase the first of several Patriot missile installments, which comprised will be the largest defense procurement in Romania's history. Other defense procurements, such as for mobile rocket systems, are also in the pipeline. But defense is not the only area which we see successful engagement. For example, sales of U.S. healthcare equipment purchased through a World Bank tender will bring magnetic resonance machines to Romanian doctors to help them diagnose and monitor disease, plan therapy, and perform surgery. So as you can see, there's ample opportunity in a robust Romanian market for our companies to do business, and we're excited for what the future holds. Now, given our growing commercial partnerships in Poland and Romania, it is fitting that the leadership of the 3Cs initiative is being passed from Poland to Romania. For us, this year's summit, which will take place in Bucharest this September, is a great opportunity to follow up on the TradeWinds mission and to continue to attract more U.S. companies to the region. The addition of a business forum to the summit agenda is a positive development in this regard, and we look forward to helping ensure its success. We also look forward to a robust agenda, one focused on business climate and specific targeted opportunities. An attractive business climate is essential to attracting investment, and companies look for transparency, predictability, and stability. Solving concerns over the enforcement of intellectual property rights, the lack of public consultation, and regulatory transparency will invoke even greater private sector interest in the region. We're encouraged by the recent visit of 3C's co-chair, Bogdan Ariescu, who recognized the necessity of delivering a short list of infrastructure projects, particularly in construction, energy, and ICT, to better link the region. Having these tangible, viable, and economically feasible projects will draw more companies to the 3Cs Summit and ensure we have successful outcomes. We hope to be able to share this list of projects with our industry partners soon, so meaningful discussions can actually take place in September. And to help focus on the economic feasibility of these projects, we encourage the organizers to continue to develop realistic financing options, such as a 3Cs investment fund. And I understand that this fund would be comprised of contributions from the 3Cs member states and the private sector to make financing these projects realistic. And with buy-in from both the Overseas Private Investment Corporation and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the fund would further strengthen our transatlantic links to the region. We applaud the efforts of the 3Cs member nations for securing support from the European Union, which is key to the effectiveness of this initiative. Let me conclude by thanking you all again for joining us today and by reiterating the Department of Commerce's continued commitment to strengthening our commercial relations with the region of the 3Cs initiative. We are all dedicated to helping you make this year's summit a complete success, and we look forward to doing business with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dale, very much for this good message from U.S. Department of Commerce and its commitment to the success of 3Cs initiative. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to the stage Paweł Chorąży, Under Secretary of State, Minister of Investment and Economic Development in Poland. Mr. Chorąży joined civil service in Poland in 2001, and since then has been always engaged personally in development, in different capacities, including World Bank, including FAR funds, pre-accession funds for Poland, including promoting the idea of fair trade also in other countries, including Croatia, Romania, Georgia, Japan, and Kazakhstan. So also very similar to our first speaker, politician with the vast experience, vast global experience. Without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Paweł Chorąży.
Thank you very much. I realize that I am really the last person between you and the lunch, so I will be very concise. I don't want to test your patience. So I come from the very technocratic part of the government, so for me it is a great pleasure to be here and listen to the more strategic discussion on Europe. So from my perspective, what we should perceive, what we should see in this initiative, it is its complementary character, because I think it is very important to look at the 3C initiative as a part of all 12 states participating in the initiative, as a part of their EU membership. So it is really a value. So I think that the historical legacy is that we perceive, I think every country in this region looked east-west axis, so we neglected to the large extent this north-south axis, and I think it is the highest time to realize it and tap potential which is in the countries. I don't want to repeat numbers, but I think population, GDP, possibilities for trade. It is something which is in the region. When we look at current development, so as I have said, I come from the technocratic part of the government, so we are responsible for projects, implementing, monitoring, evaluating them. So for me, the real value in initiatives as such, it is to make them operational. So I think the biggest challenge ahead of us It is to make projects which are in the region really implemented. So just to mention one expertise made by PwC, there is almost 160 projects of common interest in the region. Not only infrastructure, not only roads, not only railways, but also waterways, digital development, also some social interests of countries which are in the free sea countries. So we should really make an effort to start implementing. So I am really happy that our National Development Bank also takes initiative. So you are also technocratic. So I hope that with your help and with help of our friends from other countries, we can really forge ahead this initiative and make it really instrumental for future development of Europe. So the next stage is Bucharest. So you, Assistant Secretary, mentioned Bucharest and also business forum as a very important element. We also attach great importance to this event, because without business we cannot make it real. And it's been last sentence. So I can invite you for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ministers, for both statements. And I believe that lunch has been already served, so all are invited there. Thank you very much.